But right now I turn to the phone lines and find a friend of the program and a friend in general. And one of the best that Bleacher Report puts out there for sure to give us all news and information. And there's a lot of talk about Odell Beckham potentially being on the move. Still, that rumor's been out there, and it seems to be gaining a bit of steam. And to talk about that and the rest of the NFL draft that's coming up from Bleacher Report, Mike Freeman. How are you, Michael?
Very good, my man. First, I got to say, what you do with the draft and St. Jude's, and I mean, it's really amazing, and I just want to make sure I said that to you. I haven't said that to you yet. It's fantastic.
Thanks, Mike.
What you do, and it's very appreciated. And will Beckham ever be? He may never be traded, but it's this stupid rumor that won't go away.
Well, why? Why do you think? Why do you think that rumor won't go away, Mike?
It's because some of it is because. When I spoke to people about it, some of it is because they don't think he's a perfect fit in that offense. They think he's not. They don't think Baker Mayfield is that accurate of a passer, and that will tend to frustrate Beckham, and that chemistry isn't quite there. You saw some of that. Some of the chemistry was lacking last season. That's because they're so new together, and that could really improve this year, and they have a real head coach this year. So all of that could really dramatically change very quickly, but it's this feeling, and I think it's a wrong one, Rich, that Beckham can't get along with anyone. I don't think that's necessarily true. I don't think he's that bad a guy. He's a hard worker. He's very talented. But he has this perception in the league that he is a troublemaker and can't get along with people. And they think that situation there is explosive potentially. I'm not sure. I don't know. I feel like he gets a little bit of a bad rap, but I also think that there's some truth to it, that he's not a perfect fit with that quarterback in that offense. But this is a big year. We'll see this year what happens.
Mike Freeman, a Bleacher Report here on the Rich Eisen Show. And you know what? I know he, screamed at kicking nets, right? And we all know that he was part of the famed boat crew the days before a huge playoff game, the Giants' last playoff game that they played in Green Bay, and then punched a hole in the wall, et cetera, so on and so forth. But again, I've heard the same thing too, Mike, that his teammates love him, and that they get a big kick out of him, and that when he scores and he makes a big play, that just there's few players in the NFL that can, when they make a big play, can lift the entire team. So the question is what are you hearing is supposedly the bad mix between him and Mayfield?
It's not that there's any kind of personality clash. It's just that Baker Mayfield has some problems with accuracy, and will he be able to get better at that and just connect with Beckham? That's the big issue. But what you hit on there is dead on about his teammates in New York. A lot of the players really liked him. In Cleveland, a lot of the players really like him. He's very well liked in that locker room and appreciated. And when you talk to teammates about him, as I've done repeatedly, first thing they'll tell you is how hard he works and how supportive he is of people around him, and how the media sort of blows up some of this stuff. But yeah, this is going to be, I think, constantly around because of Beckham's personality. It is explosive, and the belief that he's not a great fit there. This season will determine where that goes. Where that goes this year will determine, and that Browns team could be really good because they got a lot of talent. So it could be this season will determine where and when Beckham, where he goes, how long he stays in Cleveland, if he stays for a long time, if he stays for a short time.
Yeah, I guess you could say, Mike, that the annual video. Remember, every team used to have like a video that would come out for the season. The Browns video going in is this Browns team could be really good, and then the video coming out is the Browns team could have been really good, and then that's the issue. Right. So what do you think the odds are that this guy does get traded? It's got to happen, one would think, in the next 72 hours, right? You've got to be able to take whatever you get and plug it right into a very deep draft, certainly at the wide receiver position.
Well, I think the odds overall are pretty small. I think the Browns want to give this another season and see what happens when you have a really good offensive system. Give those two, Beckham and Mayfield, more time together, and then see how that goes. You just don't want to really just give up on a guy like that so quickly. So I think the odds are small. But when the Browns say there's no way we're doing it, like, don't believe that. Teams always say that. Teams always say there's no way we're trading this guy, and then they trade him. So it's not necessarily what the Browns say, though I tend to believe them. It's more just they don't want to. They think this guy's really good, and they want to see what happens with one more season with them together and see how that goes. And if it's what I think it could be, then he won't go anywhere for a while. But if you see that lack of chemistry again, then it could be an issue. And I'll just say this real quick, Rich. One of the things that's happening now is we saw this a little bit 20, 30 years ago, 10 years ago, a little bit where teams were very hesitant to trade star receivers. They happened. I mean, Randy Moss got traded. You saw some of that. You saw Terrell Owens change teams. But teams were still hesitant to do it because of the evolving passing game, how important receivers were. And now there's so many good receivers, they're not as afraid anymore. They're willing to get rid of. I mean, Houston's a little bit of a different situation because that situation is crazy. But still, you will see that there are still teams. There are teams that are saying, I'm not as married to this great receiver. I will take a chance with another receiver in the draft or free agency. And it's been like that, and it's changing. The receivers are still obviously huge because the passing game is so big in the NFL, but they're not as afraid to make a move with a very talented wideout as they once were.
Well, I think maybe that is because wideouts maybe start to be viewed as running backs, not in the fact that, that once you're past the age of 30, you've outlived your usefulness. Although, because there are some, we've seen Emmanuel Sanders make a nice signing, even coming back from a blown out Achilles at the age of 30, yep. Continuing to do what he's doing. But we're seeing guys come out of college and just get things done and get them done fast. And this year's group
right.
is really deep. Mike Freeman here on the Rich Eisen Show. Running backs, we've seen what running backs can be coming out of college, and that makes running backs, even in their second contracts, somewhat fungible and replaceable. So what's the scoop with Leonard Fournette here? In Jacksonville, clearly, I think that this is the whole concept of him saying, let's go get Cam publicly is just the tip of the iceberg for this team and Fournette. What do you have for me on this front, Mike?
That situation, Rich, has always been a little bit tenuous because Fournette, you point out a good example of him, let's go get Cam. That's not optimal for a team. They don't want you saying, let's go get this guy when they decided we're going to go with another guy. Fournette speaks his mind, and there's something bigger, though. The Jaguars are rebuilding. They're completely restructuring that team, and we just talked about the receivers. There's still a belief that the running backs are not a key part of this game, and not as much. That you can, just going back to what you said, which is dead on, how receivers can be used as running backs. You can just throw a quick pass out to them, dump it off to them, and they can be devastating, far more devastating than some running backs. That's not in every case, obviously. There's great running backs that can do a lot. Christian McCaffrey can do a lot, but the receivers can function in that role. The tight ends can function a lot in that role. So teams just still look at backs, and I think the Jaguars are this way and say, we can find someone that we like more, that's maybe cheaper, that we believe in and we're cool with, and we're going to focus on the receivers and the quarterbacks, and backs are replaceable. That's what's happening in Jacksonville, I think. That's what's happening all over the league.
Sure. I just think for some reason, I don't know what it is, but Coughlin's gone now. But I just think that both sides are kind of sick of each other. I don't know. You kind of get that.
Yes.
You kind of get that sense with Fournette,
1,000%.
right?
Yeah, 1,000%. And there's a couple players in Jacksonville who have and the team, they're sick of each other. There's other players on that roster. And the thing about it is I'm a huge Jaguars guy. I love that organization. I like that owner a lot. I like the way it's run. So I think what they're doing is it's risky because you're basically starting over. But I like what they do overall as an organization. I love that city. I love that area. And so they're deciding we're just going to move on from these guys who may not want to be here, and we'll build our own franchise the way we want to build it. And if you don't want to be here, if you're tired of being here, well, goodbye. See you later. And I think where they're headed.
So you think Ngakoue is one of the? Obviously, he's one of those guys. Do you think he will be heading out? I mean, because that's something that bears in mind before we see the draft play out this weekend, right?
He is definitely one of those guys I want to. I mean, he's basically said it. So not basically. So I think you're going to see, Rich. I think there's a couple of these situations to really watch. He's one of them. Some of the situations with the Jaguars, maybe Beckham, but I doubt it. And a couple other guys, a couple other situations where you could see trades and moves. It's always this way with the draft, but it's really sort of shaping up that way this year. And I would just really watch the Patriots. I know we say this every year. Patriots we always say they're going to make some kind of big move. I just have been speaking to people around the league who find it hard to believe the Patriots are going to go into this year with those two quarterbacks. No offense. But they just find it hard to believe that that's what they're going to do, and they're not thinking like 5 years down the road. They think the Patriots are going to make some kind of big move at quarterback. So watch them. And I can't find anyone who thinks the Bengals are not going to get Burrow, that no matter what they're offered, they're sticking with him. They think he's the kind of guy that can energize that entire city. So unless someone does like a Mike Ditka entire draft type deal, they're not budging either. So there are a couple things that are fixed. There are a couple things to really watch. And like always, as you know, this draft, something that we never planned on and unexpected will definitely happen.
Well, let's dive in a little bit on the Patriot thing, because that's so intriguing, obviously, because it involves the Patriots and Belichick and Brady and what happens in the next step and so on and so forth. You don't think Stidham has impressed in behind the scenes enough to have the Patriots just say we're all in with this kid? You don't think that's the case? Nobody believes it?
It might be. It might be. What I'm saying is people don't believe it. I mean, I have tremendous respect for Belichick. He's the best coach to ever do it. That organization is, to me, just my opinion, the best in the history of the league. You're going to see, though, what life is like without Tom Brady. I mean, he you talk about how a tide lifts all boats. I mean, he was a tsunami. And he bettered that organization in every way. They relied so much on him, obviously with the passing offense, obviously with the offense, but he impacted every corner of the organization. One guy. And so what I'm saying is teams are saying you're going to go from that to what you have now. Anyone who follows Brady would have a hard time, but this is a particularly really brutal transition. And no one believes the Patriots are going to do this. They just don't believe it. Now, the Patriots and Belichick, he's a very confident guy. He may say, yeah, we're good with this. And he may roll the dice. And that the odds are that's probably what will happen. It's just that no one believes it. Because how does a guy go from Brady to this and not really thinking more about adding more talent to the roster at that position and taking a chance with moving up with some of these players in the draft this year who are really good. So it's just more of a question of they don't believe it. But Belichick is that kind of guy. Belichick is that guy who will say, I like him. He's impressed us. We're going to roll the dice. It's just that no one really believes it.
Mike Freeman of Bleacher Report here on the Rich Eisen Show. So, we keep talking Jameis and Cam, and for good reason, because in Jameis, you got the guy who threw for 5,000 yards, and he's got a big arm, and he seems to have turned his life around and has his head on straight and his LASIK done. And you've got Cam, who's a former first overall pick, who was entertaining and iconic in Carolina, as he said he would be. But I don't know why I'm just keep sitting here so much, Mike, and thinking, once Burrow gets drafted, Dalton's got to go somewhere. And that's when Dalton's going to start coming to this mix. And he might be the one that gets the gig in Jacksonville. Obviously, Jay Gruden's there, so on and so forth. I wonder what you think about that quarterback carousel going into the draft.
Totally agree with you on all that. I think Cam Newton has gotten one of the rawest deals that I've ever seen. A guy who was just physically just battered his whole career. The organization walks away from him. And there's this perception, and part of it is because of these times we're in now, that it's hard to just get a real hardcore physical on guys because it's just what we're facing. But there's fear of his health, his body breaking down. I think whoever gets him will get a massive steal. I don't feel as strongly about Jameis Winston. I feel that way very strongly about Cam Newton. I think he's got another really strong, really impressive chapter to write, and whoever gets him is going to get a huge bargain. But I think I agree with everything you said. I think teams are going to go with Andy Dalton first. And we talked about some of these things that could happen in a draft. This is one of those things that we'll see some type of deal in the draft. A team that doesn't necessarily, you mentioned the Jaguars, that's a possibility. There are other teams who don't get the drafted player they want, so they go for Dalton. And then after that are guys like Cam, and then after that is Jameis to me.
I agree with you, Cam. I mean, you want to talk about a chip on his shoulder and his foot? I mean, right? He's got the chip coming in, and he's got and he's still Cam Newton. You know what I mean? I know he's not going to plow people through, on third and short anymore unless he's back healthy. And I know he does have such a cannon arm that he airmails people. But there's just something about. I mean, he's still Cam Newton, and he'll put fannies in the seats. I'm just interested, but the Chargers have such a need for somebody like him. Maybe they're sitting back waiting if Tua drops to them and they come out with Tua. Then Tua checks the box of the future is now. Come get your tickets. Everybody knows who Tua is. He's a delight, so on and so forth. Maybe that's what they're waiting for with the Chargers. What do you think?
Well, you hit on, I think, one of the big things with Cam. I think there's a good half dozen teams that have him on their radar and are looking to see what happens in the draft. And some of these dominoes will fall in the draft, and some of them may not until a little bit after. But I think he's one of the dominoes that could fall because I do think the way he has been at times portrayed and treated has always irritated me. But there are teams that know he still has a lot left. And there are teams that look at him and value him and think he's very, very good still. So it's just that some of them just aren't willing to make a move now because they want to really get a good look at him physically. And also they want to wait and see what happens with the quarterbacks in the draft. But eventually there's teams out there that are sort of waiting, watching him, monitoring him, and they're going to make some moves maybe for a younger player in the draft. But he has a lot of interest. There's a lot of teams that really respect him and respect his game, respect him as a guy, respect his work ethic, all of that. So there's teams out there. I just wish he had been – I mean, look, this happens – it's the NFL. It's a big boy league. It's brutal at times. The way guys are treated is brutal at times. I just wish he was treated a little bit better, more respectfully, because he deserves it. He's earned it. He's been a really good player in this league, a really good citizen in this league. And there's still, again, Rich, there's still a lot left there. He's still got some game left.
Last one for you, Mike Freeman. Your best guess by the end of Thursday night, who's got Herbert, who's got Tua, and who's got Love by the end of the night? And if you think there's a fifth one in the mix, maybe.
I think the Dolphins still get Tua. I think the Patriots have Herbert. And I'm still not sure where that third guy goes. I still like Love to New Orleans. They have a guy that could be a future QB, but Love is a perfect kind of Sean Payton guy. So I think there's not going to be a whole lot of shocks with the quarterbacks.
Well, I got to tell you, Herbert to the Patriots is a shocker. How do you connect those dots? How does he wind up there?
Maybe. Okay.
You think he slips to 23, or Belichick actually makes a move, because he does have a ton of last day picks, and he does have a lot of late Friday third rounders. But other than that, there's not much capital to get up to where he might need to get to Herbert.
The odds of it are slim, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yes, but it goes back to what we were saying before. I just, the people I really respect in this league find it hard to believe that he's going to go into the league, go into the season with what he's got, and think he's going to make, this is the year he makes a big move. So, but the odds of that, he just may not have enough to do it. He may have no interest in doing it. It's just kind of what people are saying. That's what they think. That this is the year he finally makes really a huge move. He probably won't. It's just not what he does in general. But if he was going to do it, this is the year. So I say that sort of knowing the odds of it are slim. But I've been really talking to a lot of people last like 5 or 6 days pretty intensively, and that's sort of one of the big standouts is they think the Patriots are going to make some kind of big move for a QB. But odds are it's going to go pretty straightforward. Like who you think was going to go where, right. That's what'll happen. I don't buy the Dolphins aren't interested in Tua.
Neither do I.
I
didn't get for that head fake at all. I didn't go for that head fake at all. But the Joe Judge is interviewing Herbert by Zoom. That one was like, what? That one just left me with a head scratch. What are the Giants just putting it out there? Hey, we're sitting there at 4. If you want Herbert, you might need to come to us. I mean, like, what was that about?
That felt fake. That felt like Jim Kirk in Star Trek doing like the Corbomite maneuver. Yeah. Google it. Okay, Google it. That felt fake. That felt like some kind of poker move. That's like 3D chess, but no one's falling for it. You know what I mean?
So the Corbomite, just for people to know, it is just a total fake. It's a fugazi, right? But the Kobayashi Maru is to game the system to cheat to get what you want. So maybe that's who's pulling the Kobayashi Maru in the draft. What do you got for me there?
Gettleman is trying to pull a Kobayashi Maru, but it's coming out to be a fake Corbomite. All right, everybody, Google those things. They will make sense.
Mike, live long and prosper, man. Thanks for joining. Appreciate it. Thanks, appreciate it.
Live long and prosper, brother. Talk to you later.
Right back at you. There you go. I just gave you this.
Everybody, throw it up.
Throw up the Spock. Very good. Talk to the Spock. Hey, you watched all the way to the end. Thanks for that. Watch more right here.